Hi, it's Mark Bossert. I'm here with Bernie Pawlik, Pawlik Automotive in Vancouver, Vancouver's best auto service experience. 25 times they've been voted best in Vancouver for auto repair by their customers. And we're talking cars. How you doing, Bernie?
Doing very well.
So today's victim is a 2007 Mercedes X63 AMG that had a suspension issue. What was going on with this vehicle?
I just want to make a quick correction. I may have given you the title wrong. It's an S65 AMG, and for some reason, the numbers are so close, I get it confused. But it's a 2007 S65 AMG. So this had a hydraulic suspension system, and it was due for service. The client requested a service. He just bought the vehicle recently and wanted to make sure that the ABC suspension would last and work reliably.
What's an ABC suspension?
So ABC stands for active body control. And what that is, in the way Mercedes does it, they use this a lot on their very high-end cars, their SL series, some of the CL series AMGs, quite a few other models. And so what it is, it's a hydraulic suspension system. There's a very high-pressure pump, a hydraulic strut on all four corners, and it basically adjusts the vehicle in fractions of a second for when you're cornering. It keeps the vehicle flat, so there's no body roll. When you hit the brakes, the vehicle doesn't dip. So it keeps the vehicle in really level position all the time. However, the computer designs it and adjusts it to do.
So is there an advantage to using hydraulics over air?
There is, because hydraulics is much quicker. Air suspension is great when I want the vehicle to be sitting at this height, or I need it a little higher for off-road, or maybe it's an off-road vehicle. But when I'm driving on the highway, I want more stability, so they drop the vehicle. Air is great for that, but it takes like a second or two, or even if it's fast, to make adjustments, whereas hydraulic is almost instantaneous.
So what are some major components involved in hydraulic suspension?
Yeah, so this is a really complicated system. I'll start off with that. So there's a series of metal pipes that run through the whole vehicle, and these are high pressure pipes. The system is under approximately 3,000 PSI throughout. So there's a lot of pressure going on in these pipes. And they're kind of large diameter compared to, say, a brake pipe, which usually 3/16 to a 1/4 inch. These are, more like 5/16 inch pipes. They're larger. So there's a series of pipes. There are valves for each strut. There's a hydraulic strut on each corner. There are level sensors. And there's, of course, the pump, which is the sort of heart of the system that pumps the pressure. Fluid reservoir with a filter, and accumulators, which accumulate pressure for immediate adjustments. As I say, the system needs to change very quickly.
So what's involved in a suspension service for this sort of vehicle?
So the main part of the service is a fluid flush. I mean, this fluid has worked hard. It's not like engine oil where there's combustion gas, but the fluid, over time, it's usually like a light green color to start with. It tends to go black after time, from the heat that is basically generated through the system. So over time, the fluid flush is kind of the main component. There's a filter that gets changed as well. In the case of this service, we also replaced the accumulators. The client requested it, which is not a bad thing to do. They do tend to fail after time, and they're not an overly expensive price component of the system. So, and if they do fail, the system tends to not operate quite properly. So fixing those can prevent further issues down the road.
And how often would this kind of service be required?
But there's no Mercedes set interval, but I'd recommend probably about every 50,000 kilometers or 5 years, depending on how the car is used. I mean, an SL will often sit in someone's garage and just used on sunny days. Some people use them for daily drivers. Other people, they're just a once a month kind of drive. So for those people, every 5 years is good. But for people who drive a lot in any of these cars, every 50,000 is probably good. And if it hasn't been done in a long time, then, it's definitely worth doing.
Do we have some images?
I do. So what we're looking at here is the reservoir for the ABC system. This is the power steering here. So I'm moving the mouse pointer around. This is for the power steering fluid. And by the way, the pump, which is called a tandem pump, actually pumps the power steering fluid and the ABC suspension fluid at the same time. There's two separated chambers, but they actually incorporate two pumps into one. Of course, the ABC pump is much higher pressure than the power steering system. So inside this reservoir, there's probably a liter or two of fluid where it says, I don't know how to say this in German, but it's basically oil in German. There's a dipstick there. You can check in to adjust the level. And underneath this round cap here, once this is removed, there's a filter inside there that we replace. This is one of the accumulators we replaced. This is in the rear. Interestingly enough, on this particular vehicle, the accumulator is actually in the trunk of the vehicle. You unbolt everything from outside, but the accumulator actually sits in the trunk. That's the rear one. This is the front. And there's a view of the filter. And one of the things we do with the service is we sort of warm the fluid up and get the system active. And so with a good scan tool, there's many diagnostic modes in this vehicle. One of them is called rodeo, and this is particularly fun. You can set it, and it basically causes the vehicle to, well, you can just watch it. You can see why they call it rodeo. Just watch the video. As you can see, the vehicle is moving around, and it basically causes all four corners to jump. It's a rather odd feeling when you're sitting in the car. It's kind of like a bucking bronco. So it just basically activates different corners of the car. This is good for testing purposes. If there's a problem with the vehicle and it's, say, losing pressure in one corner, it won't operate after a certain amount of time, or just to warm the fluid up for this particular service. I've often thought it'd be really fun to just put the scan tool on. You have to have the engine running, but just put that mode on, pull a car into a shopping mall parking lot, and just leave the car running in rodeo mode and just watch people looking at it going, what the hell's going on with this thing? I've yet to have tried it, but so it's the first thing that always comes to my mind.
So how did it all work out after all the service was done?
Yeah, it was good. It worked fantastic, but to be honest, it worked great beforehand too. The owner had bought this vehicle recently, and there was a few items that needed to be repaired on the vehicle, and he wanted to do some good maintenance on it. So one thing I did, scan it. There was no codes in the system, which is a good sign beforehand, and it seemed to operate fine. And afterwards, it's good. I will say on this S65, of course, this is a luxury sedan. It's not really a sports car, although it goes as fast as pretty much as any SL model, but it doesn't have the sport ride that you have on an SL. So the suspension, there's no adjustment buttons for it. You just get in the car and you drive it and it takes care of itself. But in an SL, you can adjust it for different ride heights. This has no ride height adjustment. It just sits at one level. So control wise, a little simpler, but it's not really, it's the same system, but it just doesn't have the other controls where it has different ride heights or different sport mode or comfort mode. This thing's all comfort with a bit of sport.
There you go. If you're looking for service for your mini lowrider Mercedes S65s or any version of Mercedes in Vancouver, the guys to see are Pawlik Automotive. You can book online at pawlikautomotive.com, or you can call them 604-327-7112 to book your appointment. You have to call ahead to book because they're always busy. Pawlik Automotive, Vancouver, BC, Canada. Thanks so much for watching and listening. We appreciate it. Thanks, Bernie.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for watching.